Compared to the previous seasons, Yellowjackets Season 3 has been noticeably slower. While a lot is happening, the pace of events is far slower than in previous editions. With Episode 6, Thanksgiving Canada, all of this is altered. Even while the first 5 episodes were nonetheless captivating and kept us watching, something was always lacking. With returning characters, stunning revelations, and possibly the most shocking twist of all, this week amplifies every element and ultimately delves into the story from every perspective, character, and potential plot point, providing us with a rich and engrossing edition. When Shauna, Melanie Linsky, walks home the door after a hard day of working as a citizen detective with Walter, Elijah Wood, Jeff, Warren Cole, is waiting for her. This is because Episode 6 begins immediately after the events of Episode 5. Shauna must inform Jeff of Lottie's, Simone Kessel, passing because he is unaware of it. She must also explain her concerns that Lottie was murdered, citing the fact that disgraced cult members don't just fall down the stairs and die. Callie, Sarah Desjardins, overhears them without her and Jeff knowing, and she is obviously upset to learn of Lottie's passing. The scene enables us to go back to the season's first episode, when Callie discovered the cassette that Shauna had received. Although she hasn't listened to it, she tells her parents that she believes it might be related to Lottie's passing. For Shauna, the brakes on her van, the freezer event, and now the tape are all warning signs that someone is attempting to murder her. The Sudeikis gather and travel to a hotel known as the Jolly Hitcher in an effort to avoid danger. Jeff asks Shauna how horrible this is and whether it's similar to anything in her diaries when they're settled, but Shauna hasn't even listened to the cassette yet, so she is unsure. Jeff claims that because they even know where she lives, someone must have something against her, so whatever it is, it can't be good. After telling Jeff that she won't allow anyone to harm him or Callie, Shauna pretends to be dizzy from hunger to get him to leave the room so she can call Van, Lauren Ambrose, who is currently getting massages at a different hotel with Tysa, Tommy Cypress. The cassette, which is actually a DAT tape, may be played by Van, of course. Van claims to have a DAT player someplace and will be able to bring it over later this week, but Shauna emphasizes the urgency of the situation and requests that she locate the player as soon as possible. Van and Tysa meet Shauna at the Jolly Hitcher after discovering the DAT player, and they immediately start listening to it in the car. Only a short footage is shown to us, and it features sounds of the girls yelling wildly, as they have done several times, usually during a hunt for a wilderness sacrifice. Van claims that the only persons who are aware of the tape are either deceased or themselves, and they have already ruled out Misty, Christina Ricci, as a possibility. We don't know where the tape came from, but they don't have much more time to ponder since Shauna quickly locates Callie's phone in her purse and learns that Callie has it recording their entire chat. She returns inside after wiping out the tape and leaving Tay and Van in confusion. Callie claims she has a right to know what's in store for them, but Shauna chastises her for recording the conversation. Callie responds to Shauna's argument that she is merely a child by pointing out that she is the same age as Shauna was when she was in the woods. Shauna finds this a bit too personal and sends Callie out of the room. Unbeknownst to Shauna, Callie retrieves the voice memo from the newly erased folder on her phone, so she can still hear everything. Although it's no secret that Taysa hasn't been herself this season, Episode 6 is when it all comes to a head. Following her phone conversation with Shauna regarding the DAT recording, Van learns that Taysa has placed an ostentatious room service order, complete with lobster. Van calls Taysa out as he hurried the hotel personnel out of the room. Lottie is dead, Shauna is crying, and Ty is taking care of herself. "I feel like everything is falling apart," Taysa says. In addition to losing Lottie and Nat, she has also lost her family, her job, and to top it all off, her true love is battling cancer. She just wants to feel happy for the time being because she can't mend anything. Van expresses sympathy, but argues that they must take action because their friend sounds quite afraid. Van reflects on strange garage bands and extreme birders before he pauses when Ty laughs that Shauna is terrified of a DAT cassette and asks who even uses them these days. Her expression falls, and she informs Tay that they must depart immediately. Later, we cut to Van searching through boxes of Tay's possessions in her home's basement before she eventually locates the DAT player. But as soon as she locates it, the phone in the box starts to ring and the electricity flickers. Van picks it up, a little scared and confused. Even though it's distorted, she recognizes the voice, it's Ty, and she's pleading for assistance. Van looks at her in horror as the real Ty suddenly descends the stairs. He doesn't know what's happening, but he puts everything aside to assist Shauna. Later that evening, when they are in bed, Taysa is asleep and Van is searching the internet for the duration of DAT tape's outdoor life when Taysa suddenly jumps up in bed. She begs Van to help her because she is out of breath and in a panic, but as soon as she finishes speaking, her face softens and she collapses back into the cushions and asks Van why she is still awake. Van now realizes that Ty is no longer Ty and that other Ty has taken over. The only thing left to do is figure out how to save Ty from herself before it's too late. In episode 5, after Walter, Shauna, and Misty competed to look into Lottie's death, Walter apologizes to Misty and offers her Lottie's trash as a peace offering. He claims that while he was unable to understand anything from it, she might be able to. There may have been another reason Lottie went to Bamboo Cafe, because when Misty finds takeout containers from the restaurant, she searches for the name and discovers that it is the most un-Lottie restaurant ever. It has a 2.5 rating, a C from the health department, and no vegetarian options. When Misty decides to look into it, she sees Lisa Nicole Maines, a former member of Lottie's cult, bringing leftovers from the eatery. Misty follows Lisa and tries to talk to her, but Lisa is afraid of her, and understandably so, as the needle that murdered Natalie was originally intended for her. Lisa argues that not everyone converts their trauma into murder like Misty does when she accuses her of killing Lottie. Nevertheless, she shares with Misty all of her knowledge, including the fact that the last time she saw Lottie, she placed a large food order and left Lisa a $50,000 tip in an envelope that just read, "I'm sorry." Although Lisa acknowledges that she has learned to accept the good things when they come after all the negative things that have happened to her, Misty claims that such a significant tip is suspicious. Lisa also suggests to Misty that if she's still in shock that Lottie fell down the stairs, she could want to ask her own friends, particularly Taysa, who met Lottie the day she passed away. Lisa claims to have seen them together just outside the restaurant, but Misty doesn't believe her. Coach Scott, Steven Kruger, who had his Achilles tendon severed at the end of the last episode, is not feeling well. Although his life has been spared, what is the price? Only because Aquila, near Sundaya, had a vision that he was their bridge home. Is he being kept alive in a confinement with animals? Otherwise, he would have perished. When Natalie, Sophie Thatcher, delivers him breakfast, he tells her that's no life. Moreover, he implores her to murder him, or at the very least, to provide him a weapon so he may do it himself. She doesn't believe him when he tries to incite her by saying he set the cabin on fire in the hopes that it will enrage her enough to murder him. He begs for his death each time she brings him food, and eventually she stops bringing him meals because she can no longer bear it. Eventually, Marie, Alexa Boreas, takes over the duty of delivering Coach's meals, but when she gets there, she smells something foul and sees flies buzzing everywhere. He appears frail and sick with a sunken face. She discovers that he has been storing his meals uneaten and that there is almost a week's supply of decaying food on the table next to him. He wants to die, which is why he is on a hunger strike. They're still clinging to what Aquila saw in her vision, therefore Lottie, Courtney Eaton, is very opposed to the concept. Later that day, Coach is restrained by Misty, Samantha Hanratty, and a few other team members who arrive wearing face covers. They force a tube down Coach's throat and fill it with food, forcing him to swallow. It is heartbreaking to witness, and he is coughing up blood as Natalie enters to see how he is doing. Later that evening, we see Natalie laying in her hut with tears in her eyes, demonstrating how much this vision sticks with her. At last, she rises, grabs a knife, and walks to the location where Coach Scott is being held. Natalie tells Travis, Kevin Alves, that she must do this when he stops her, and Travis understands and tells her that he will keep watch, but that she should hurry because the sun will soon rise. Coach understands what Natalie is there to do as soon as he sees the knife in her hand and merely asks, "Please." Coach scoots closer and thanks her just before she drives the knife into his chest, but she finds it difficult to follow through. He gives a loud gasp and passes away quietly, letting go of all the anguish and misery he had been clinging to. When Natalie stumbles out of Coach's enclosure with bloody hands, the team is awake and morning has arrived. Devastated, Misty accuses Nat of murder and rushes to Coach's side, laying out his body as though it were being properly buried. The rest of the crew, meanwhile, cries for Natalie's pity, murdering him. She maintains that since he had been in pain, it was the appropriate thing to do. While Jen, Vanessa Prasad, pushes her to the ground and Van, Liv Hewson, yells that it wasn't her choice, Melissa, Jenna Burgess, merely instructs her to stop talking. Shauna, Sophie Nales, informs Ty, Jasmine Savoy Brown, that there is no need for a second trial because Nat is guilty and she has confessed. Now they just have to choose what to do with her. Lottie recommends Shauna take the lead moving forward. It takes some time for this to sink in, but once it does, Shauna makes her first decision with relative ease. They always honor those who die, so tonight they will honor Coach Scott and they will give the wilderness what it wants, she explains, avoiding being outright harsh. What about Natalie's penalty? The feast will be prepared by her. She guides Nat through getting Coach's body ready, and it's a brutal scene similar to the Shauna we've been seeing this season. However, she softens a little when she covers his face with a piece of cloth, so Nat won't have to look at him as she does it. Lottie murmurs that everything is wrong, and that this isn't how it's meant to be as the team celebrates Coach with a feast that evening. She had gone to pray among the trees a bit earlier in the episode, pleading with the wilderness to speak to her and listen to her. It appears that the wilderness is listening because she begins to hear whispers and laughter, but neither of those things is happening. The same taunting screeches that we have heard throughout the season are echoed by the forest as Lottie lets out a sudden, piercing scream. The sounds of the forest become even louder and more chaotic as she invites everyone else to join her. But at that moment, Lottie spots a figure standing just outside the camp. For a moment, she believes it to be Coach, but that isn't conceivable. She suddenly freezes, and everyone else does too, since they are unfamiliar with the people. It's a means of escape, civilization, I hope. The credits roll before they can say anything because the man in front of them yells as he sees Coach Scott's head on the table. Is this really what will save them?